Today is Tuesday, March 8th. We'll update you about another round of peace talks and a growing humanitarian crisis in Ukraine, how Western nations are helping and where they're drawing the line. Also encouraging progress in America's fight against COVID-19. Plus, one of the guys behind the Gamestop frenzy is now coming for another struggling retailer, why a starting football player got suspended for all of next season, and how to celebrate this year's International Women's Day. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. The third round of peace talks between Russian and Ukrainian officials ended with no major breakthroughs, and the brutal invasion continues, with Russia still pounding Ukraine with rockets, bombs, and bullets. One Ukrainian negotiator did tweet that there were some small positive developments on safe routes for people to flee the conflict, but he didn't go into specifics. And later in the day, Ukraine's president once again accused Russian forces of attacking the safe corridors that were supposed to be used for delivering aid and evacuating refugees. On the other side, Russia says it will stop all attacks in Ukraine if the Ukrainian government meets their demands. And those include stopping all military action, adjusting the country's constitution to rule out ever joining NATO or the European Union, acknowledging the region of Crimea as Russian, not Ukrainian, and recognizing two eastern Ukrainian regions as independent states. Ukraine has rejected those terms, but the talks will continue. Foreign ministers from both Ukraine and Russia are set to meet Thursday in Turkey. Those will be the highest-level talks since the invasion began. Meanwhile, Ukraine is facing a humanitarian catastrophe. The New York Times says there are now fears thousands of Ukrainians could die in the coming days if urgent relief does not arrive soon. In some places, it's been days since they've seen food, water, power, heat, or medicine. And the World Health Organization confirmed at least 14 attacks on Ukrainian health facilities. Through it all, Ukraine's President Zelensky says his people have been showing unprecedented courage. But the road ahead is tough. Zelensky told ABC News, quote, "For one soldier of Ukraine, we have 10 Russian soldiers. And for one Ukrainian tank, we have 50 Russian tanks." And soon it might not just be the Russian troops fighting on behalf of Russia. The Pentagon confirmed reports that Russia is recruiting Syrian mercenaries to fight in Ukraine. And it's possible troops from Belarus could eventually help the Russians too. So Ukraine is depending on more volunteers, no matter what country they come from, who can fight. To be continued. Even though Western countries are not actually deploying troops into Ukraine, they keep sending aid and weapons. And they've hit Russia with massive sanctions that Russia's president has called, quote, akin to a declaration of war. But Ukraine's president is calling on the West to do more. President Zelensky is asking for more fighter jets for the Ukrainian Air Force. That's something the Biden administration says it is considering now. Zelensky also wants a no-fly zone over his country, so Russian planes would not be able to carry out so many airstrikes. But the issue with that is no-fly zones would have to be enforced with military power. So if a Russian aircraft flew into a NATO no-fly zone, NATO forces would have to take action. And NATO still says its military forces will not get involved outside of NATO territory in any way. In NATO territory, it's a different story. In fact, the U.S. just sent another 500 troops into Europe. That pushes the total number of American forces in the region to 100,000. The idea is to keep Russia from moving the invasion into other countries, and they'll help defend NATO's airspace if needed. Well, unfortunately, we have another school shooting to tell you about. This one happened yesterday on the grounds of a Des Moines, Iowa high school just outside the building. 3 teenagers were shot. A 15-year-old who was apparently not a student there died. 2 others, 16 and 18 years old, were students and are said to be in critical condition. All the students inside the building went on lockdown and are okay. Police say it appeared to be a drive-by shooting. At last check, they've detained potential suspects, but no charges have been filed yet. East High School has canceled classes today and is offering grief counselors to students instead. The COVID-19 pandemic is entering its 3rd year this week. And unfortunately, the official global death toll is still climbing. As Johns Hopkins reports, it's just surpassed 6 million. And public health experts agree that's likely a vast undercount since data collecting and testing is not reliable everywhere. Just in the U.S., nearly 1 million deaths have been confirmed since COVID-19 first appeared here in 2020. That's the biggest official death toll in the world. But the numbers have been trending downward in the last month. And experts say the U.S. may be in for, at the very least, a near-normal spring and summer. The CDC put out new data that shows where COVID-19 is spreading most. It takes into account new case numbers and hospital capacity. And it says these days, only 7% of Americans live in places where the community level is considered high. So public health officials say this shows the current surge is waning. But they still caution just because this is the end of a surge, it doesn't necessarily mean the end of the pandemic. It all depends on whether another variant comes along and whether that variant might be able to get past vaccines and treatments. Stay tuned. All right, we have much more news still coming up, but first a quick break for our sponsor. When it comes to looking good, Stitch Fix has you covered. Say goodbye to wasting all your time and energy on endless browsing online, and hello to fresh picks curated for your taste and your size. Whether you need date night dresses or cozy loungewear, Stitch Fix can help refresh your look. And you have options. For the least work on your part, just schedule a fix and a stylist will send you 5 pieces that fit your style, size, and price range with no subscription required. Keep what you like and then return the rest. I love this option because you can actually try things on and get that extra help from a stylist. But there's another great option if you'd rather choose items yourself, and that's called Stitch Fix Freestyle. It's an online shop built just for you, based on your preferences, so it's kind of like having your very own clothing store. It's the easy way to get items that are just right for you from brands you know and trust, like Madewell and Sanctuary. Get started today by filling out your free style quiz at stitchfix.com/newsworthy and take advantage of free shipping and free returns. That's stitchfix.com/newsworthy to try Stitch Fix. stitchfix.com/newsworthy. Gas prices have officially hit an all-time high. Gas Buddy says the national average for a gallon of gas topped $4.10, beating the record from July 2008. And experts warn these sky-high prices will stick around a lot longer than they did 14 years ago. The head of Gas Buddy says not only have Americans never paid this much for gas, they've never seen prices climb this fast and furious. Of course, he blames the price hike on Russia's war on Ukraine, since sanctions on Russia have curbed their flow of oil. That led to the massive spike in oil prices, which led to higher fuel prices across the board, including gas, diesel, and jet fuel. The economic fallout from the war rippled through Wall Street, too. The S&P had its sharpest drop since May of 2020. The Dow lost 800 points, and the Nasdaq dropped 20% from its November high. So it's now in what's called a bear market, aka a sustained period of time when stock prices are falling. The slump comes as Congress mulls over a deal that would ban Russian energy imports altogether. But it wasn't a bad day for everyone on Wall Street. Bed Bath & Beyond stock soared more than 30% yesterday. It happened after billionaire investor Ryan Cohen revealed he bought a nearly 10% stake in the retailer. Cohen was one of the investors who drove the Gamestop stock mania back in 2020. Remember that? Well, Cohen sent a letter to Bed Bath & Beyond criticizing their current business strategies and urging them to make some changes. He even floated the idea of selling the company to a private equity firm. In recent years, the home goods store has struggled to keep up with competitors like e-giant Amazon and big box stores like Walmart and Target. Today, we could get a glimpse of a new iPhone, iPad, and maybe fresh Mac models at Apple's first launch event of the year. Reports say we're mainly expecting to see some product updates, like a big upgrade to its MacBooks and iMacs. But there are rumors that the unofficial star of today's event might be an updated iPhone SE. And that's Apple's budget iPhone. And as Bloomberg News reports, Apple will unveil a faster version that runs on 5G and features an updated camera. But the big question is if the SE's price tag will stay the same. It's cost $399 since it launched 2 years ago. If we do get a look at the new SE today, it would be a rare reveal this early in the year. Apple usually saves its biggest debuts, like new iPhones, for their fall events ahead of the holiday shopping season. We'll find out today when the virtual event live streams at 10 a.m. Pacific time. A pro football player is now suspended for at least the next season. The NFL says Atlanta Falcons wide receiver Calvin Ridley bet on games while he was off the field last November. Ridley actually left the Falcons last season to focus on his mental health, and during that time, he allegedly made bets that aren't allowed. The NFL said no inside information was used and no games were compromised, but the league's commissioner told Ridley he put the integrity of the game at risk. After the news of his suspension broke, Ridley took to Twitter to say he does not have a gambling problem. He also vowed to come back better than ever, but he's not eligible to take the field again until February of next year at the earliest. If you've seen selfies on social media lately with people striking an X pose with their arms, well, it's a nod to this year's International Women's Day, which is today. The theme of this year's global holiday is #BreakTheBias. And that's where the X selfies come in. The campaign is calling for support on social media. It's also putting the spotlight on biases women face every day, like gender discrimination at their job or maternal bias, where it's assumed mothers are less committed to things outside the home. Since the early 1900s, this day has been highlighting cultural, political, and socioeconomic achievements of women. And that keeps going today with rallies and events happening all over the world, like the UN's virtual event that will recognize women leading the charge on climate change. The recognition does not have to stop there either. March is also Women's History Month. Well, that's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Trivia Tuesday, when we ask a different trivia question every week. But first, this podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. When I first started this podcast and business, I had high expectations for myself, and I realized I wasn't always as easy on myself as I would be, say, on a friend. Well, I realized the most important relationship any of us can have in our lives is with ourselves. So I got proactive and I started therapy. I have learned so much from it about myself, about reacting to situations, about living the life I want. I actually think everyone can benefit in some way from therapy. And it's not necessarily just for bad times in your life, although it can be helpful then too. Well, BetterHelp is online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist, so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. Give it a try and see why over 2 million people have used BetterHelp Online Therapy. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and the Newsworthy listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/newsworthy. That's BetterHelp, betterhelp.com/newsworthy. Okay, now back to Trivia Tuesday. Today's trivia question is, who was Sports Illustrated's first female sportsperson of the year? You can answer the question and play along on Instagram. Just find and follow us at NewsworthyPod and look for the trivia quiz in our Instagram stories today. As for last week's trivia question, what is the largest planet in our solar system? The answer is Jupiter. Not only is it the biggest planet in the solar system, Jupiter is twice as massive as all the other planets combined. So to compare, if Earth was the size of a grape, Jupiter would be about as big as a basketball. It's a planet so large it was named after the king of the gods in Roman mythology. And you may have heard of its biggest and most famous storm, the Great Red Spot, which, by the way, is twice the width of Earth and has been raging for hundreds of years. As for Jupiter's familiar stripes and swirls, they're actually cold, windy clouds of ammonia and water floating in an atmosphere of hydrogen and helium. Jupiter may be massive, but that doesn't mean it can support life. NASA says its temperatures, pressures, and materials are just too extreme. But that's not the case for some of its 79 moons. Scientists say the moon named Europa is one of the most likely places to find life besides Earth. There's even evidence of a huge ocean on it just underneath its icy crust where life could possibly be supported. All right, thank you so much for listening today and every day and for sharing the show. And if you haven't heard yet, the Newsworthy Insiders now get an extra benefit for their support. In addition to ad-free podcast episodes, they have the option to get daily emails with short written versions of the stories and all the episode notes right in their inbox. Go to thenewsworthy.com/insider to learn more and start your 7-day free trial. All right, we'll be back with another news roundup tomorrow. Until then, have a great day.